Hail Internet, it's Paul, it's Matt, the Dork Lords. We are here talking about HBO's brand new show, Watchmen, the series.
Yes.
Episode 1, it's summer and we're running out of ice, which, you know, I grew up in and watching High School Musicals, but the one musical I kind of like escaped my attention, Oklahoma. You were the one who had to tell me that the title is a reference to Oklahoma. So there you go.
Oh, you didn't even know that?
I didn't. I mean, I knew that. Anyway, no.
So even when we got to that part of the episode when they sing,
I thought maybe
it's summer
like,
and we're running out of ice.
Maybe they just made that up for the show.
Or you didn't know that it was from Oklahoma, perhaps, even?
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
Oh, wow, okay.
I mean, I guess I would have put that together if I had said, this was not created for the show, this is just a musical, and it's probably Oklahoma. But okay.
Oh, wow, okay.
But yeah, so that's what it is.
Wow.
You guys out there are probably not as dumb as I am, but
maybe not. Maybe
yeah.
you are as dumb as he is.
So the character, we're gonna jump around a little bit here, but Don Johnson, his name is Judd in the show.
Yes.
At the very end, of course, we're doing all these spoilers, right? Spoiler alert, great, okay. He is killed, and the song is about a character in Oklahoma named Judd who is wondering about, hey, if I died, people might like me better or say nice things about me.
That's what's being proposed by Curly, the part that Judd in the show played. Curly supposes to Judd, if you killed yourself.
So it's all a hoax. No. He seems quite dead. There's a lot of art commenting on real life in this show. You've got the whole Oklahoma narrative. He being Don Johnson, goes to watch a performance of Oklahoma.
That has an all-black cast.
As he calls it, Black Oklahoma.
Strangely.
And, we see in the very beginning of this, our little kid, who I believe is Lou Gossett Jr. as an older man. We'll talk about him more in a second. But he is watching this silent film about Bass Reeves, who was an actual lawman back in the early part of the of the 1900s.
But I assume after the war, I would assume.
This is a fictionalized version of a real life person that he's watching and being inspired by. We see that in the modern day there is this American hero story, and they're really pushing this angle of this show, and it seems to be about the superheroes that we know of in the Watchmen universe. So anyway, there's a lot of art commenting on life, commenting on art. All right, anyway. So, setup, we open Tulsa, 1921. Horrible, horrible riot. Is an actual historical event.
Yes.
Where white residents, led by the KKK, killed off a whole lot of people that weren't white.
Yeah.
And it was just a terrible, terrible situation. And we're brought into it by this little kid who survives those riots, basically through the work of his parents, who put him into a truck and send him away right before the place they're in blows up.
But you compared to...
I could actually, there's two. You could compare it to Superman and Batman, almost. Like Superman, you compare it to because it's like, Kal-El, our planet, here, we'll send you off.
Yes.
And then the planet destroyed.
Yes, and there's even a request to please take care of our child.
Right.
Whereas,
and it's like, watch over this boy, which
is
a Watchmen reference, obviously. And so there's that, but then there's also, if you think about the idea that he's watching this show about this mythical, almost like a hooded hero.
Yeah.
And then after attending the theater, his parents are killed off. It'd be the same thing as Batman, Bruce Wayne going to see Zorro.
Yes.
And then his parents get killed, and he's maybe inspired in that way too. But I think I saw this. I can't take credit for this. I saw this online, and I think it's dead on that the character that Lou Gossett Jr. is playing, his name is Will Reeves. So if you think of Reeves as the name of the hero, the little kid version of him is watching in the silent movie. If you think about the character that guy is playing in the black and white silent movie, he's got a hood on and he lassos the sheriff.
Yes.
Later in the episode, we see in the background like a little promo for this American hero story going on, and one of those heroes it shows is Hooded Justice, and Hooded Justice is kind of like the original hero that a lot of the Watchmen were inspired by. So he predates the 80s version of the Watchmen, but his costume is he's got a noose and then a bright red cape, and he hides his face. Well, at the very end, when we see the shocking sight of Don Johnson hanging from a noose, it's Lou Gossett Jr., Will Reeves, sitting by him with a bright red jacket on. Bright red jacket, noose, and he's this very old. We find out from the trailer for the rest of the season he's 105. So he's kind of an outrageously old, yet still active guy.
It is outrageous.
It's outrageously old. I mean, in other words, when he asked the question, you think I can lift a 200 pounds? Probably a 105-year-old, probably. Yeah. Anyway, I think that is our long retired, but still active as he can be, Hooded Justice. Hooded Justice is Lou Gossett Jr.
Okay.
Anyway, there you go. Boom. This show is taking place in modern day, but a modern day of an alternate Earth, where the events of the Watchmen, like in the movie, well, that's actually not the movie, the comics happened. And so that all happened back in the 80s, and now you've got, several years later, decades later, what is modern day like if that's what happened back in the day? For instance, Vietnam is a state. We've got apparently little squids falling from the sky. Yeah. We've got the cops wear masks because at some point there was this big, like a vigilante movement, a racist vigilante movement. But in any case, they found the cops' houses, and while they were off duty, went and killed a bunch of cops. And so that was called the White Night. And since then, apparently there's been a bit of a peace between the white supremacists and the cops, or somehow, but then it was broken, obviously, into the show. But that made the cops start wearing masks so that they wouldn't be singled out and killed off. There's a society where it doesn't look like they have the internet. They still got pagers, and so the technology is a little less. What are some other differences?
Nixon on the
on Mount Rushmore. Right. Robert Redford has been president for over 30 years.
Yeah.
We've got a situation where the cops can't use their weapons until they get really special authorization, and so that's obviously a reaction to something.
So yeah, there's a lot of very interesting stuff that I'm sure we'll see played off. Like one of the things that we've seen in terms of the reparations that apparently have happened, which they call Redfordations, and the fact that we're seeing an all-black cast of Oklahoma, and then but obviously the Rorschach people are very racially motivated. So
we get the idea that, if you remember at the end of the movie and at the end of the comic, Rorschach sends off a journal which kind of spells out what actually happened, kind of spells out the conspiracy that was going on. And he sent it off to this kind of right-wing magazine, essentially. Mm-hmm. So we get the idea that this group, they call themselves the 7th Cavalry, with a K. They wear Rorschach masks, and they recite stuff from that journal in that one videotaped piece they do, where they're like, well, that's her, no. So we get the idea that they've been inspired by their version of Rorschach, what they think of, and so yeah, that's another reality in this world. When we open, we see. It's a traffic stop, but it's a white driver and a black cop. The white driver happens to be a member of the 7th Cavalry. By the way, 7th Cavalry is a reference to, it's still an active military unit in the U.S., but it's most famous for being the unit that Custer had Custer's last stand. That was in the Indian Wars. You know, it was like kill the others essentially when they
don't
massacred.
They don't have a new name for that now.
What, with the Indian Wars?
Yeah, because they weren't fighting Indians.
Yeah, I think they still. I mean, if you, I googled it and it came up as
It's
Indian
terrible.
Wars.
Terrible.
So, but Little Bighorn was
Yeah.
anyway. So, but that's I assume the reference that this group is making.
I don't see why it wouldn't be.
Yeah. So the stop goes horribly awry. I'll say this: the cop, he's got some stamina. He got
Yes.
shot a bunch of
Yes, he
times.
did.
I'm like, how is he?
Yes,
I guess
he did.
maybe he had a vest. I don't know.
That could
but,
be, yeah.
like,
Hopefully
woo!
that's the case. Yeah,
I mean, it was like he was hit
yeah.
30
numerous
times in the
Oh.
chest. I don't know. Dig, 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 dig,
Oh, I didn't
dig,
realize
dig, dig,
it was
dig. It
more
was
than-
like
I
he was
didn't know
doing this a
more
lot.
than 12. I
Okay,
thought.
sure. I'm
but
probably
maybe.
overestimating, but it just seemed like yikes.
Yeah,
Anyway,
no, he really did. Yeah, I don't think he had an automatic weapon. I think it was just, but I don't know. I could be wrong. I don't know guns.
right, and he was trying to get permission to use his weapon.
Yes.
And he calls in, and the person was like, "Who's on the desk or whatever?" And it's like, "It's Panda." And he's like, he could tell he's like, "Oh, this guy's not going to let me use my gun." And sure enough, by the time he's able to actually use the gun, it's too late, and he gets shot.
Yes.
So we find out through this video from the 7th Cavalry that there's some kind of thing going on. They have a plan. They're like tick tock, tick tock, tick tock.
yes.
Which, you know, the Watchman, but no, the clock was always a thing. Back in the 80s version of the Watchman, it was all about nuclear war. You know, we're running out of time. Now it seems to be ticking up to like a race war or something. I don't know. So there's a lot of tensions there. We see that the cops they use vigilantes. So it's kind of tough to tell. Yeah, the guys that are theoretically the outlaws are wearing masks, and the cops are wearing masks. Everyone's wearing masks.
Yeah, and it's even. I don't think we see anybody else in their actual life. We see Night. I almost call her Night Mistress.
Regina King.
Regina King. Yeah, there you go. We see Regina King before doing sort of show and tell before a class, and she says that she's a baker. You know, and she even has a bakery that hasn't opened yet.
Yeah, you get the feeling it maybe never.
And that was one of the. It's funny. I didn't
a front,
initially recognize that first, or at least for her anyway, visual reference to the smile. The first time I had to go back and like, wait a minute.
Eggs,
Oh,
yeah.
she did a little smile.
Well, I also noticed that in describing that recipe she's doing, she's talking about separating the whites
from the color. Yeah, from the
Yeah.
yolks. Yeah.
Yeah. And so and she even mentions another point. It's all black and white. Like there's
Yes.
it's obviously race is a very important component to this show. So yeah, and we also do see that the cop who was shot when Don Johnson goes to visit his wife,
Yes.
he mentions like what was his cover? So
Yeah,
he's like,
well, we
he
don't-
was going to engineering school at night.
Yes. Right. Exactly.
So that's how they have to like work.
Yeah.
It's like,
They have
I'm
to-
going off to engineering
Yeah,
classes.
it's just, here's my
woo!
lie about what I'm doing, which, you know, you'd think it wouldn't actually be that easy. Well, I shouldn't say that. Yeah, it's just, imagine they have to do a lot to make sure that they're not
It's a
known.
lot of hoops to jump through.
Yeah.
And like it only takes one day of oops, I screwed up to be like, oh, that ruined that.
Right. Yeah, and part of the precaution they have to take with that officer in the hospital is to make sure that they control who knows who's there.
Right,
with
all the doctors.
the nurses. Yeah.
That said, there's an implication that there is someone on the inside of the cops that is working in league. It's not overt, but the fact that Don Johnson's character gets called away, and it's like, oh, it seems like the cops. I'm forgetting the guy's name. The cop who was shot is up and about. I'm gonna go see him.
It's sort of like in The Godfather with Sonny.
Yeah, it did have that feel for sure. And then he drives off away from.
Got killed in the causeway.
He kind of drives away from his support staff. Right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
the same. So when he drives out of his security zone, and there's a strip to puncture tires,
Yeah.
and he gets out of the car, and the next thing we know, he's lynched. But the fact that they would have known he was coming at that time, it suggests that the call was made at a certain time and whatever. So perhaps there is someone on the inside, probably somebody we met.
They were kind of patting themselves in the back after they had what seemed like a successful raid. Yeah, and the person who initially killed himself. So even that was perhaps they would have liked to have talked to him to see if they could beat any more information out of him. They were pretty.
Yeah, they take cyanide capsules.
They were feeling like they pretty much had quelled something, I think.
Now, this is the interesting one of the interesting points.
There had been a video that said like,
get ready. There's a lot of us, and we're going to do horrible things to you. Yeah. One of the things that I thought was really interesting, and I was kind of sad to see if this is the end for Don Johnson. Then
he's going to appear in the show in flashbacks.
Flashbacks. Okay.
But the reason why I say that is because what I've seen is they make reference to the relationship between him and Regina King. So we're probably going to see another aspect of that. I mean, I'd be surprised if it was anything other than a sort of fatherly relationship. I mean, it didn't seem very homey. It seemed very integrated or whatever, but it didn't seem like it was anything that was more than that to me.
I hear you. And I just thought it was an interesting point that he doesn't wear a mask.
Yes.
That he's the leader of the cops. I don't know if he's chief of police or what, and he's brazenly walking around without a mask.
Right. He does have this dress uniform that he seems to always wear.
Yeah. And just to make sure people know. Anyway, it was just like, well, that guy's probably going to get killed off one day.
I shouldn't say always wears. Because he asks him where his uniform is when he goes to the hospital. He's in the
and in
next
fact,
room.
we technically don't know he's going to the hospital. I mean, he says it, and then he puts on his dress outfit. But maybe there's some other place he's going with the dress outfit. I don't know.
But then, I mean, that, yeah.
I'm not saying that's a thing. I'm just saying, I guess the only reason we know it's a hospital thing is that he says, I'm going to the hospital. You wouldn't think he would necessarily need to put on his outfit for the hospital, but
right.
I guess anyway. So the flashback. Actually, that's an interesting point because in some ways that's the framing device for the Watchmen movie and maybe the comic as well. I'm not that familiar with the comic, but it's the comedian dies right off the bat,
right? And then you
we
see all
flashbacks to like, that guy was a real jerk. So I don't know if they're gonna. That guy was a jerk, him or not, but in the comic, instead of having this, the way that Ozymandias, who is being played in this by Jeremy Irons, the way he got the U.S. and Russia to stop, the nuclear threat, was he genetically created this giant squid, and then using Dr. Manhattan's teleportation abilities, he kind of copied him, and then he teleported this squid into New York, and by the act of doing that, it blew up and it killed a whole bunch of people. Half of New York died. But the implication was that this thing was an interdimensional monster. It wasn't. But that was the idea of like, we have an interdimensional threat. We all need to unite and work together. Apparently that worked to some degree. But the fact that there are squid falling from the sky, and when our guy Looking Glass, with the shiny mask, is interrogating 7th Cavalry guy, he mentions, do you think that I forget how I put it, but do you think that the attack on New York was a hoax? It was propagated by the government. We know in this case that it is a hoax. The squid attack was a hoax.
We know that, not necessarily by the government.
Right. So are the little squids falling also a hoax?
Oh, interesting.
They have a little buzzer that goes off. Oh, squid's coming. And then they all pull over and wait. And then it rains. And then they have a little squid removal truck.
Oh.
He actually had a squid on the back. It was like tick, 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 tick. In the classroom, in the background, I saw a sign that was like, parts of a squid. Oh. And it had like, how to identify squid. Anyway.
Oh, wow.
So if there's possibly this is just this thing that they've gone on to continue the idea that there's this interdimensional squid threat by like dropping squids every once in a while. I don't know. I guess the other option would be there actually is somehow it does rain squid. I think it's probably fake. Maybe it's not the government doing it. Maybe it's Ozymandias still doing it somehow. Using
Yeah,
the
who knows?
teleportation ability.
Yeah, or I don't know.
Speaking of
I don't think we know
Ozymandias,
enough
everybody thinks he's dead. There's a newspaper that mentions he's dead, but he's obviously not, because we see him riding a horse up to a castle somewhere. Looks European, if I had to guess. He has 2 servants. I would say both of them are androids, but they're not perfect. One of them is like offers him a horseshoe to cut his cake.
yes.
And then you can tell when it's like the female member of the staff who's made this cake for him. It's not a good cake.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, I used the honeycomb you suggested. Oh, and he's like, okay. And it's like I feel like he's disappointed. Like he hasn't perfected his idea of his android creations yet. They give him a watch, a pocket watch, which might be a reference back to, I think there was such a watch. Dr. Manhattan is the son of a watchmaker. So when he says, I'm doing a tragedy in 5 acts called The Watchmaker's Son, well, it sounds like it's a direct reference to Dr. Manhattan. So maybe there's some plan that Ozymandias has. And it's probably related to Dr. Manhattan. Here's a thought I have. This is probably wrong, but I'll throw it out there as a maybe.
Okay, sure.
I was trying to picture what this is that he's doing. And so he's faked his death.
Yes.
And he's off somewhere in parts unknown, and he's created his own androids.
Sure.
Maybe he's, the thing about Dr. Manhattan was Dr. Manhattan went off to Mars and created his own world. They have a 24/7, cam on him now. We see that where he's like building and destroying things. Maybe it's Ozymandias' attempt. I would think he's a very prideful person. And maybe it bothers him that he can't create his own world like Dr. Manhattan can. And so he's trying his best. It's like, this is my world, but it's not perfect because he can't. Like his version of servants are like, here's a horseshoe to cut your cake. God, like Dr. Manhattan could have done this. I don't know. Maybe it's that attempt to be the best. I want to be known as like the best hero or something like that.
That could be. I mean,
and then, so to do that, he has to get rid of Dr. Manhattan, maybe.
Right. I mean, this is the first episode,
Yeah.
so
I know.
It's just wild speculation.
That's wild speculation.
And neither of us are the biggest expert on the old, the original.
Right. If you've got some ideas for
Yes.
what that is all about, how does Ozymandias fit into Tulsa, Oklahoma? I don't think he's in Tulsa. Let's put it that way.
Castles of Tulsa.
The castles of Tulsa. There's a great scene where they're invading the cattle ranch.
Yes.
And they open up the 7th Cavalry opens up this giant gun and just starts shooting cows in an attempt to shoot the people hiding amongst the cows.
Yes.
But woo!
Yeah.
It's a bloody scene.
It is.
Put it that way. That's a waste of some cows.
Yeah, they did.
What kind of cattle ranch are you if you don't mow down your cows? If there is a mole in the cops, who's your early bet? Perhaps we probably met the person.
I mean, unfortunately, the only person, because I'm already unhappy with him, is Panda.
Yeah.
He's the only person I can think.
I think he's too obvious.
Yeah, right. I agree.
He seems this pacifist who's like, don't use guns, and he's warning them about quoting regs. But
so yeah,
no,
I feel like it might be somebody we haven't met yet.
Okay.
But it may be some we've met, but they're really pacing themselves in terms of part of the world they're moving out. So I'm not convinced yet that I feel as if there are probably other questions that they haven't given us the clues for yet.
I did notice that there's a strobe effect on Don Johnson when he comes out and he notices he sees the strip that punctured his tires and he's like, oh shit, and then bing 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 bing, and which is a similar effect that Looking Glass uses when he's doing his thing.
True.
I don't know. Again, it's almost too obvious.
Wild speculation.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, it is I was enthralled by it.
Yeah.
I think it's it's an excellent show, and it does have a certain Leftovers vibe to it.
Yeah.
Almost, you know,
Yeah.
it's like an alternate world where something, you know, kind of crazy has happened,
Right,
and people
right.
have kind of adapted to that new
Right,
reality,
right.
and in a very serious way.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, and I definitely see the style and how it's proceeding. To me, is very much in line with Leftovers and Lost.
yeah.
Feels of a kind to me.
So, yay to Watchmen. We'll be back talking about episode 2 and such, and in the near future, we're also going to be talking about Mr. Robot.
Yes.
So, come on back for that. Anything else, sir?
No, I don't think so.
All right. All right. Thanks
wait.
Yep.
Ha 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 ha! Gotcha. As an aside, I forgot. I think it's just probably not anything intentional, but it's just interesting to me that not only do you have the Reeves, who's this?
Will Reeves.
Will Reeves, and also who he's based on.
Oh, like Christopher Reeves.
Right, there's Christopher Reeves, but also George Reeves.
Oh, right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
Ding, 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 ding.
the first TV Superman, because there was a serial Superman. So, but
Very
yeah,
good.
so it's interesting how like the Reeves, you know, beyond the inspiration supposedly for Lone Ranger, and the inspiration for this character Reeves is, you know, George and Chris.
Yeah. No, that's a cool Easter egg.
Yeah.
Good sir. All right. So we'll be back, and come join us. Thanks, everybody.